Welcome back to the Shadow Dossier. Today, we are opening a file that the United States Navy has officially denied for over 80 years. They claim it never happened. They claim it was just a misunderstanding about magnetic minesweeping. But the families of the crew members aboard the USS Eldridge tell a different story. A story of physics gone wrong, of sailors fused into solid steel, and a ship that didn't just vanish from the eye, but vanished from reality itself. This is the story of Project Rainbow, better known as the Philadelphia Experiment. The year is 1943. World War II is at its peak. German U-boats are sinking Allied ships across the Atlantic, hunting them like wolves. The U.S. Navy is desperate for a solution. They don't just want a stronger ship. They want a ship that cannot be seen, not invisible to the eye, but invisible to radar and magnetic mines. To achieve this, the government turns to the greatest minds of the century. Rumors persist that Nikola Tesla laid the groundwork for the mathematics, and Albert Einstein was brought in to finish it. The theory was based on the unified field theory, the idea that gravity and electromagnetism are connected. If you could bend light around an object using massive electromagnetic coils, that object would theoretically become invisible. The test subject was a Cannon-class destroyer escort named the USS Eldridge, docked at the Philadelphia Naval Shipyard. The date was October 28, 1943. Witnesses on the nearby SS Andrew Furuseth watched as the hum of the massive generators aboard the Eldridge began to scream. The air around the ship began to shimmer. The water beneath the hull turned a sickly green color, and then a greenish fog enveloped the destroyer. When the fog cleared, the USS Eldridge was gone. It hadn't just disappeared from radar, it had disappeared physically. There was nothing there but empty water. According to the classified reports, the ship didn't just turn invisible, it teleported. In a matter of seconds, the USS Eldridge appeared nearly 200 miles away in Norfolk, Virginia. Witnesses there saw the ship materialize out of thin air for a few minutes, only to vanish again and reappear back in Philadelphia. But when the generators were finally shut down and the green fog lifted in Philadelphia, the celebration turned into a nightmare. The ship was back, but something was wrong, very wrong. The medical teams that boarded the ship were met with a scene from hell. Some sailors were violently ill, vomiting and disoriented. Others were walking around in a trance, completely unresponsive. But the true horror was found on the deck. 5 crew members were found fused into the metal structure of the ship. Their bodies were not crushed, they were merged with the steel. Hands were buried inside bulkheads, legs were sealed into the deck plates. It was as if the ship and the men had occupied the same space at the same time, and when the reality solidified, they became one. 2 men were buried upright in the steel floor, screaming until they died. Another was found with his hand phased through the compass binnacle. The laws of physics had been broken, and the human cost was catastrophic. Those who survived were never the same. Some reportedly went insane. Others would fade in and out of visibility for years, a condition the Navy allegedly called going blank. There is a story of a sailor who walked through the wall of a bar in front of his wife and was never seen again. The Navy immediately classified the project as top secret. The equipment was removed, the crew was discharged and brainwashed, and the ship's logs were destroyed. To this day, the Office of Naval Research states that no such experiment took place. But one question remains. If Project Rainbow was a failure, why did the research continue? Files leaked decades later suggest that the technology wasn't abandoned, it was moved.
It was moved to a remote Air Force base in Long Island, New York, for a new project. A project that would deal not with invisibility, but with time. The USS Eldridge may have been the first victim, but it wouldn't be the last. The door they opened in 1943 never truly closed. And somewhere in the frequency between radar and reality, the screams of those sailors can still be heard. This has been a file from the Shadow Dossier. Remember, the official story is just the cover. The truth is always hidden in the static.
But the story doesn't end in 1943. 4 decades later, in the desolate windswept dunes of Camp Hero in Montauk, New York, that same green fog returned. It is known as the Montauk Project. In the early 1980s, decommissioned military radars at Camp Hero began turning back on. Locals reported strange headaches, animals behaving aggressively, and weather anomalies that defied forecasting. But deep underground, in the concrete bunkers beneath the radar tower, scientists were no longer trying to turn ships invisible. They were trying to manipulate the human mind and the fabric of time itself. The centerpiece of this nightmare was a device known as the Montauk chair. According to whistleblowers like Preston Nichols and Al Bielek, the chair was a psychic amplifier. A test subject, often a young man with psychic potential, would sit in the chair. Coils and sensors would pick up his thoughts, feed them into a massive IBM supercomputer, and amplify them into reality. If the subject thought of an apple, a solid physical apple would materialize in the room. But the scientists got greedy. They didn't just want objects, they wanted to open portals. On August 12, 1983, exactly 40 years to the day after the Philadelphia experiment, they pushed the chair to its limit. They ordered the psychic subject to visualize a tunnel through time. The power grid surged, the ground shook, and in the center of the lab, a vortex ripped open. This is where the timeline twists. Witnesses claim that inside that vortex, they saw the USS Eldridge. The ship from 1943 had not just teleported to Norfolk. It had fallen into a hyperspace wormhole that connected it directly to 1983. The sailors who went insane weren't just lost in space. They were trapped in a time loop between these two experiments. But opening a door between decades let something else in. Something that wasn't human. The psychic in the chair, exhausted and terrified, lost focus. His subconscious fear took over. He imagined a monster. And because the machine made thoughts real, the monster appeared. They called it the Beast. A massive, hairy, Sasquatch-like creature materialized inside the base. It wasn't a hologram. It was solid, it was hungry, and it was angry. It tore through the facility, destroying equipment and attacking personnel. Panic ensued. The scientists realized they had lost control. To stop the creature and close the portal, Preston Nichols had to physically smash the equipment powering the Montauk chair. The transmitters were destroyed, the power was cut, and the beast faded back into the ether. The portal collapsed, sealing the USS Eldridge back in its own time. Or so they thought. Today, Camp Hero is a state park. You can visit the massive Sage radar tower that still looms over the horizon. The basement entrances are filled with concrete. The trails are marked, but hikers still report hearing mechanical humming from beneath the earth. Did the project truly end, or did they just learn to hide it better? The Philadelphia experiment proved we could trick the eye. The Montauk project proved we could trick time. But the cost of playing God is high.
And somewhere, in a timeline we haven't lived yet, the bill is coming due. This is the end of File 1943. Stay in the shadows, trust no one, and keep watching the static.